This is the foundation of all manifestation, and yet it's the most misunderstood. Most people believe that wanting something badly enough will somehow draw it into their lives, as if craving, hoping, or begging the universe is the formula for success. But here's the hard truth. Desire alone doesn't manifest. You don't get what you wish for. You get what you are energetically aligned with. The universe doesn't respond to your longing. It responds to your frequency. And your frequency is not determined by your thoughts alone, but by the identity you hold, the emotional patterns you live in, and the habits that govern your being. You can want wealth while still identifying as broke. You can want love while believing deep down you're unlovable. You can want success, but if your self-worth is rooted in failure, all that wanting becomes resistance instead of attraction. The world doesn't give you what you're asking for with your lips. It gives you what you're signaling with your presence. This is why manifestation isn't simply about vision boards or positive thinking. Those are tools, but the transformation happens at the level of being, not just thinking. Let's break it down. You're not a magnet because you say affirmations in the mirror. You're a magnet because your nervous system, your subconscious mind, and your emotional state are all locked into coherence with the life you say you want. When there's internal contradiction, when your body is stuck in fear, while your mouth is chanting abundance, you're in static. And static doesn't attract, clarity does, emotional congruence does, identity does. If you want to change what you're attracting, you don't start with external effort. You start with internal elevation. You must ask, who am I being right now? Not who do I want to become in the future, but who am I embodying in this moment? Because the energy you carry right now is shaping your next moment. You're already manifesting something. It just might not be what you prefer. Why? Because your current energetic signature is calibrated to your past patterns, not your future potential. To change that, you must elevate the signal you're sending. Imagine someone saying, "I want financial freedom." They say it over and over again. They write it down. They visualize it. But every time they spend money, they feel guilt. Every time they see someone successful, they feel envy. Every time they look at their bank account, they feel fear. That emotional state is the frequency, and fear attracts scarcity. Guilt attracts limitation. Envy attracts more lack. The universe is reading your energy, not your to-do list. And until that energy becomes a match for the abundance you want, it won't come not sustainably, and not in the way you're hoping for. Let's take another example. Someone longing for a healthy, loving relationship. They may create a list of ideal traits in a partner. They may pray for connection, even join all the right dating apps, but deep inside, they still carry the wounds of betrayal. They expect to be hurt. They brace for rejection. They doubt their own worthiness. What happens? They either repel healthy connections or attract people who reflect their unresolved patterns. Not because they don't deserve love, but because they haven't yet become the energetic match for the love they say they want. They're still vibrating at the level of fear, self-protection, and abandonment. So that's what repeats. To truly attract what you desire, you must become the version of you who already has it. You must think like them. Feel like them. Walk, breathe, move, and show up like them, even when your outer world hasn't caught up. Especially then, that's the true test of alignment, being internally committed when there's no external confirmation. Most people wait to feel abundant until they have money. Wait to feel confident until they succeed. Wait to feel loved until they're chosen. That's backwards. The feeling must precede the event. The identity must precede the outcome. Because what you're not being now, you're not bringing in later. This doesn't mean you fake it. It means you train it. You step into that higher frequency every single day, not by pretending you're someone else, but by shedding the layers of who you're not. The doubt, the guilt, the stories, the conditioning. You strip away the weight of survival mode and remember that manifestation is about resonance. And resonance happens when your mind, heart, and body are all saying the same thing. I am already aligned with the life I am creating. This is why inner work is not optional. Meditation, self-inquiry, nervous system regulation, and intentional living, these aren't luxury rituals. They're essential recalibrations. You're not just changing how you feel. You're changing your energetic signal. And that signal is the foundation of attraction. When you move from lack to wholeness, from fear to trust, from doubt to knowing, the field around you changes. People feel it, opportunities feel it. Circumstances shift because you've shifted. You don't attract success by chasing it. You attract success by becoming someone who believes it's normal. You don't attract peace by running from chaos. You attract peace by no longer reacting to chaos. You don't attract miracles by begging for them. You attract them by expecting them, not from arrogance, but from alignment. Because when your inner world is already vibrating at the level of your desire, manifestation becomes inevitable. Now, here's the paradox. The moment you stop chasing and start embodying, the desire no longer owns you. You become free, because you realize you never needed the external thing to feel the internal state. You just needed to give yourself permission to feel it now. That's when you become the creator, not the seeker. That's when you stop manifesting from need and start manifesting from truth. And the truth is, what you want is just a mirror of who you're becoming. It's not out there. It's already encoded within you. It just needs permission to rise. The person who says, I want this, is often still separate from it. The person who says, this is who I am, is the one drawing it in, because in the realm of energy, identity is the invitation. Everything else is just noise. Emotion is the hidden architecture behind everything you create. While thoughts might initiate the process of manifestation, it is emotion that sets the direction, power, and momentum of that creation. Without emotion, manifestation is hollow. It's like trying to light a fire with wet wood, technically possible, but it won't burn with intensity. And intensity matters. Intensity tells the universe you're not merely interested, you're invested. Manifestation without emotion is a silent signal. Manifestation infused with emotion becomes a thunderclap the universe cannot ignore. Emotion is not just a side effect of desire, it's the fuel. When you imagine the life you want and your heart starts to race, when your eyes tear up with the possibility, when your entire body feels the vibration of what could be, that's when you're actually starting to manifest, not when you write it down, not when you say it out loud, but when your inner world starts to vibrate at the frequency of your desire. The universe speaks vibration, not vocabulary. So when your emotion matches your vision, your signal becomes clear. Here's the key. Most people feel emotions that are the opposite of what they're trying to manifest. They want success, but they carry the emotional residue of failure. They want love, but they feel unworthy. They want peace, but they live in anxiety. So even when their words say, I want this, their emotional signature says, I'm still expecting the opposite. And emotion always wins. Emotion is the dominant frequency. It tells the truth of what you really believe, what you really expect, and what you're really attracting. The most powerful emotional state for manifestation is not hope. Hope still holds distance. It says, I wish for this to come. But gratitude collapses time. Gratitude says, it's already here, I already have it, I already am it. Gratitude is the only emotional state that simultaneously acknowledges the present while also anchoring you into your future. It tricks the subconscious mind into believing the vision is already reality. And the subconscious doesn't know the difference between imagined experience and actual experience. That's not philosophy, that's neurology. So when you feel gratitude for something before it shows up, You begin to wire your mind and body to receive it. When you rehearse emotions ahead of the actual event, you build neurological pathways that prepare you to embody the identity that matches the desire. That's why gratitude is not a passive emotion, it's active. It rewires your brain, it activates your body. It shifts your energy. You can't be in a true state of gratitude and also be in fear. You can't be immersed in gratitude and also believe that lack is your future. Because when you're truly grateful, you are in trust. And trust is the container that manifestation needs to unfold. Gratitude is also the ultimate disruptor of resistance. Resistance shows up as doubt, frustration, impatience, and the fear that what you want might never arrive. But gratitude disarms that resistance. It softens your nervous system. It changes your posture. It opens your heart. And an open heart is a magnet. A closed heart repels. This is why people who live in constant complaint, even if they are actively working hard toward goals, often find themselves stuck. Their energy is blocking the very thing they are chasing. They are too busy identifying what's missing to receive what's available. When you practice gratitude in the absence of visible results, you're declaring to the universe that your trust is not conditional. That's when you begin to lead your reality instead of reacting to it. Most people wait to feel grateful until something changes. But the moment you flip, that when you start feeling gratitude first, you activate the energy that causes change. That's what makes it real, not the external thing showing up, but your internal state shifting into congruence. Imagine waking up every morning and instead of asking, "Why hasn't it happened yet?" you ask, "How can I feel like it's already happening?" That one shift changes everything. Because that emotion becomes your point of attraction. If you can wake up and feel the way you would feel if your dream had already come true, you're already halfway there. You're no longer waiting for the world to give you permission to feel the way you want to feel. You're generating it. You're leading your vibration instead of chasing results. And that's the essence of powerful manifestation. It's also important to understand that gratitude is not denial. You're not pretending that everything is perfect. You're choosing to tune into the signal that best aligns with what you're calling in. That's emotional mastery, not bypassing, but transmutation. You feel the disappointment, the fear, the doubt. And then you consciously shift into gratitude as a declaration of who you choose to be. That choice is a recalibration of your entire frequency. And frequency attracts experience. If you think of your life like a radio tower, then your emotional state is the station you're broadcasting on. When you're broadcasting on the frequency of joy, love, worthiness, and gratitude, you begin to receive signals that match those vibrations. Not because the world suddenly becomes perfect, but because your perception, choices, and behavior start aligning with that frequency. You walk differently, you speak differently, you notice opportunities you once overlooked. People respond to you with a different energy. And slowly, the external world begins to mirror your internal state. When you feel emotionally disconnected from your desires, it's often because you're more attached to the outcome than the feeling. But the feeling is what matters, the feeling is what creates. Your vision isn't something you're supposed to obsess over. It's something you're meant to feel into. Your job is not to control the how. Your job is to maintain the frequency. And gratitude is the most stable, powerful, and accessible frequency available to you in any moment. The fastest way to activate gratitude is through embodiment. Don't just write it in a journal. Speak it out loud. Close your eyes and feel it in your chest. Let your entire nervous system flood with the sensation that what you're asking for has already arrived. Move like the person who's already received it. Make choices like someone who already trusts the outcome is secure. That's not delusion. That's leadership over your own energy. And that leadership is what creates results. Your future is not waiting for you to earn it through stress. It's waiting for you to align with it emotionally. Because once your emotion becomes a match for your vision, manifestation stops being a question of if, and starts becoming a matter of when and how fast. Gratitude speeds that process, not because it changes the universe, but because it changes you into someone who is finally ready to receive every person lives inside a story. That story is not written by fate, nor is it handed down by the universe. It is constructed through experiences, emotions, beliefs, and repeated thoughts. From childhood, we begin to collect evidence that shapes the narrative we carry about who we are, what is possible, and what we're worthy of. That story becomes the lens through which we view life, make decisions, build relationships, chase dreams, and respond to challenges. But most people never pause to ask the question, is this story still serving me? The truth is, no matter how much you want to manifest a new reality, you cannot create a different future if you're still living by the emotional rules of your past. The story that got you here cannot take you there. If your old story is built on wounds, failure, betrayal, disappointment, scarcity, or rejection, then that story has a frequency, and you will continue to attract experiences that match it. Not because you're being punished, but because your energy is in agreement with the vibration of that story. The nervous system doesn't manifest what you want. It manifests what it believes is familiar and safe. And sometimes pain becomes so familiar that we begin to wear it like identity. When you begin the work of manifestation, you are not just dreaming of a new life. You are breaking away from the energetic gravity of the old one. That old identity, old language, old mindset, and old emotional habits do not dissolve on their own. They must be disrupted. They must be questioned. They must be rewritten. If not, they become the unconscious ceiling of your growth. You might build new goals, take new steps, repeat new affirmations, but if the story inside hasn't changed, you will eventually sabotage, delay, or loop back into the pattern that feels emotionally familiar. This is why breakthrough doesn't happen in logic. It happens in emotional disobedience. It begins when you stop obeying the thoughts that kept you small. It begins when you interrupt the inner voice that says, "I've never done that before, so I probably can't." That voice is not truth. That voice is memory. It is the echo of what you once felt when you were afraid, humiliated, rejected, or overlooked. But the more you listen to it, the more you strengthen the belief that your future will always look like your past. And belief is the blueprint of reality. To break your old story, you must first be willing to recognize it. This takes honesty. It takes the courage to name the thoughts and emotions that have silently governed your decisions. You have to look at the patterns in your relationships, your finances, your health, and your self-worth. You must become aware of the script that runs in the background when things go wrong or when opportunities arise. Do you immediately assume failure? Do you expect betrayal? Do you shrink in the face of uncertainty? These responses aren't random, they're chapters from a story you've lived too long without editing. And the editing begins when you decide to stop identifying with what hurt you. You are not your trauma. You are not your generational baggage. You are not the environment you were raised in. You are not even your past self. The moment you say, "This pattern ends with me," you become the author instead of the actor. You reclaim the pen. And from that moment forward, every choice you make either reinforces the old narrative or begins to write a new one. Creating a new future requires emotional friction. The brain resists change. The ego resists unfamiliarity. Even if your current life is painful, it may still feel safer than the unknown. That's how strong the old story can be. It tells you to play small because it's predictable. It tells you to stay in toxic relationships because at least you know how they work. It tells you to undercharge your value because confidence feels like a risk. But manifestation cannot operate in the field of comfort. It requires you to outgrow your own limitations. It demands that you leave behind the version of yourself that was built by survival. Some people try to manifest a new chapter while staying emotionally married to the old one. They want abundance but still speak the language of lack. They want love but still act from the wounds of past heartbreak. They want success but still carry the weight of "I'm not enough." You cannot bring your old story into your new future and expect transformation. Something must be left behind. Maybe it's the way you speak to yourself. Maybe it's the environment you keep returning to. Maybe it's the identity you've clung to because it gave you sympathy, attention, or a sense of belonging. But until you release the emotional rewards of the old story, you won't have space to receive the gifts of the new one. This is the moment where most people hesitate. Releasing an old story can feel like death because it is, in a way. You're letting go of a version of yourself that kept you safe, even if it kept you stuck. You're walking into a version of you that you've never met before. That requires faith. That requires imagination. That requires a willingness to stand in the gap between who you've been and who you're becoming without needing external proof. You rewrite the story in the dark before anyone else believes it. And that's where power lies, in the invisible decision to no longer be who you were trained to be. This doesn't mean the old story disappears overnight. It will rise again in moments of doubt, in old triggers, in familiar situations. But the difference is now you're awake. Now you see it. Now you have the awareness to pause, choose, and redirect. And each time you do, you weaken the neural pathways of the past and strengthen the embodiment of your new narrative. That's the process. That's how change becomes permanent, not through willpower, but through identity shifts repeated until they become natural. You are not stuck because of your circumstances. You are stuck because you have agreed, consciously or unconsciously, to a story about your limits. And the moment you begin to challenge that agreement, the energy around you begins to reorganize. Life starts responding to your new choices. People treat you differently. Opportunities appear that once seemed invisible. Your reality bends to reflect the story you're now willing to live. Not the one you inherited, not the one you survived, but the one you're brave enough to build from this moment forward. Manifestation is not a passive process. It is not enough to think, to wish, or to visualize. Those elements are part of the foundation, but the real construction of your desired life begins when you take intentional action. Action is the physical proof of belief. It is the declaration that you are not just waiting for things to happen. You are ready to meet your desire halfway. Action is the energy of movement, and movement is the language of the universe. Most people misunderstand this. They believe that manifestation is simply about alignment, that if they feel good enough, think positively enough, and wait long enough, the universe will deliver. But the universe doesn't respond to waiting. It responds to energy and motion. Your desires are not attracted to your idle thoughts. They are drawn to your willingness to move toward them. Not with desperation, but with devotion. Not with anxiety, but with clarity. When you act, you create a current. That current stirs possibility. It stirs synchronicity. It stirs support. But none of that is activated until you move. Commitment begins the moment you decide to act on behalf of your future instead of your fear. You don't need the entire plan to be clear. You only need to trust the next step. And when you take it, you shift from the realm of hoping into the realm of becoming. Action transforms identity. It tells your nervous system that you are no longer just imagining your next level. You are inhabiting it. Even if the step is small, even if it's imperfect, The act of doing creates a vibrational shift that thinking alone can never replicate. There is a profound difference between knowing something and embodying it. Knowing comes from study. Embodiment comes from action. You can read every book on wealth, on health, on relationships, and on confidence, but until you apply that knowledge, you are still observing life instead of participating in it. Embodiment means you are willing to feel the discomfort that action requires. It means you are willing to fail forward, to speak before you're fully ready, to start before you feel completely qualified. That edge, that stretch, that's where growth lies. Momentum doesn't come from waiting for the perfect moment. Momentum is created through movement. One step leads to another. One decision leads to a shift in mindset. One act of courage leads to a new opportunity. The people who create extraordinary lives are not the ones who had all the answers from the beginning. They are the ones who were willing to act without guarantees. They were willing to move while still afraid. They were willing to risk rejection, failure, and imperfection, because the cost of staying stagnant was greater than the fear of falling short. Every act of courage creates a ripple, and you never know which ripple becomes the breakthrough. That conversation you almost avoided. That email you hesitated to send. That opportunity you thought you weren't ready for. These small choices compound into transformation. Action creates evidence. And the more evidence you give your subconscious that you are capable, that you are showing up, that you are becoming the person who matches your vision, the more your inner world begins to trust. Confidence isn't gifted, it's built, one action at a time. You don't need massive action to begin. You need meaningful action. A single aligned step taken in faith carries more energetic weight than 100 forced moves rooted in fear. Alignment means you act from the identity of who you are becoming, not from the desperation of what you are lacking. When your action is infused with intentional energy, you shift the way the world responds to you. Doors open. People notice. Opportunities arise, and it feels almost magical, but it's not magic. It's momentum. Momentum is the unseen force that carries you when motivation wears off. Motivation is fleeting. It depends on mood. It depends on comfort, but momentum is self-sustaining. Once you create it, it begins to carry you forward even when fear returns. Even when resistance shows up. Even when results take longer than expected. The hardest part is the beginning. The launch, the decision to leave the old rhythm and create a new one. Once you do, the energy of movement takes over. The body loves familiarity. The mind loves patterns. So if you've been conditioned to stay still, to play small, to wait for permission, then the first actions will feel unnatural. That's not a sign to stop. It's a sign that you're disrupting a pattern, and disruption is required for any kind of breakthrough. You can't build momentum without resistance. The weight of your old beliefs will try to pull you back. The voice in your head will tell you it's too late, too hard, too uncertain. That voice is not truth, it's memory. And every time you act anyway, you weaken its hold. There's a sacred shift that happens when you take action despite doubt. You begin to prove to yourself that you can trust your own decisions. You start to rely less on external validation and more on internal certainty. You stop waiting for conditions to be perfect and start making progress even when they're messy. And that progress compounds. Suddenly, you're not the same person you were a month ago, not because you waited, but because you moved. The reason action is so powerful in manifestation is that it aligns all parts of your being. The mind thinks, the heart feels, and the body acts. When all three are in coherence, you are unstoppable. That coherence sends a signal to the universe that you are no longer hoping for change, you are becoming the change. You are not a spectator of your future, you are an architect. You are not a victim of your circumstances. You are a co-creator with life itself. There will be setbacks. There will be moments when the path looks unclear. But the beauty of momentum is that it doesn't require perfection. It only requires consistency. The tiniest movement forward still breaks the inertia of inaction. And with each step, your capacity grows. Your confidence grows, your clarity grows, because clarity doesn't come before action. It comes through action. You cannot think your way into a new life. You must act your way into it. Your desire is not waiting for you to be ready. It's waiting for you to begin. The moment you do, you shift from hoping for a miracle to becoming the force that creates one. At the core of every manifestation is not a goal, a wish, or even a dream. It is an identity. Manifestation is not about pulling something in from outside of you. It is about drawing out the version of yourself that already exists inside, the version that lives at the frequency of the life you desire. Every outcome you want to attract is simply a reflection of a self you must become. You don't manifest what you want. You manifest who you are willing to be. That is why manifestation is not a moment of magic. It is the embodiment of identity in motion. People often focus on results. They visualize the money, the house, the relationship, the achievement. They get fixated on the external reward. But the truth is that these things are not the manifestation itself. They are the byproducts of a deeper alignment. Real manifestation begins when you stop obsessing over the outcome and start embodying the energy of the version of you who naturally experiences that outcome. That version of you doesn't chase. They don't beg. They don't wait. They become. This is where most people get stuck. They think the process of manifestation begins when the desire is formed. But in reality, the process begins when the identity shifts. You cannot manifest from the same mindset, the same emotional habits, and the same behavioral patterns that created your current reality. The current version of you created the life you're living. The next version of you will create the life you desire. So the bridge between where you are and where you want to go is not in the wish. It's in the embodiment of the self that already lives in that new reality. That's why manifestation is not a destination. It's a state of being. You don't get what you want because you hope hard enough. You get what you want because you show up as the person who already lives there. This isn't about pretending or faking it until you make it. It's about shifting your internal experience so fully that the external world has no choice but to rearrange itself around your new identity. The law of attraction responds to who you are, not just to what you imagine. Your identity is made up of patterns: how you think, feel, speak, choose, react, and expect. If those patterns are rooted in survival, fear, doubt, or limitation, then your manifestation efforts will always be countered by the energetic weight of who you believe yourself to be. It's not enough to visualize a goal. You have to feel safe being the person who lives that goal. That means healing the parts of you that feel undeserving, releasing the narratives that say you're not ready, letting go of the emotional addiction to struggle, because some part of you believes that struggle equals worth. Becoming what you seek means learning to live in alignment with your desired identity, even before the results show up. Especially before they show up, it means deciding how that future version of you thinks, what they say yes and no to, how they take care of their body, how they move through fear, how they invest their time, how they trust their own intuition. Then practicing those behaviors not someday, not when life feels easier, but right now in the present moment. Because every time you act in alignment with that version of you, you close the gap between desire and embodiment. The universe is not withholding anything from you. It is simply matching your current identity. If your frequency is still resonating with old wounds, old fears, and old habits, then the reality around you will reflect that. When you shift your identity, truly shift it, you don't have to force change. Change becomes automatic. When you become a person who believes in their worth, you don't have to beg for love. When you become someone who knows they're meant to lead, you don't have to chase recognition. When you become a vessel of abundance, you don't have to stress over every penny. You magnetize what matches your embodiment. This is why so many people who appear to have less talent, experience, or resources succeed at manifesting their desires faster than those who have more, because they are willing to fully embody the identity required. They don't wait to be chosen. They choose themselves. They don't wait to feel qualified. They declare their readiness. They don't look around for proof that it's possible. They become the proof. Identity is the magnet. Identity is the key. Identity is the frequency that determines the speed, ease, and sustainability of your manifestation. What you seek is not separate from you. It is already connected to the version of you that you've yet to consistently live as. The job, the partner, the peace, the purpose, they're all already aligned with a specific energetic signature. The question is not how do I get them? The question is, how do I become the person who already lives in harmony with them? That's the work. That's the invitation. That's the transformation. This process is not about control. It's about alignment. You don't control when things arrive. You align yourself with the version of you that would already have them. And alignment is not an intellectual idea. It's a felt experience. It's an energetic calibration. It's a rewiring of belief, a refinement of behavior, and a deep emotional decision to no longer live at the level of your past self. When you truly become what you seek, you stop chasing. You start attracting through resonance, through truth, through presence. That presence is the most powerful force in manifestation. It means you are no longer negotiating with your doubt. You are no longer waiting for external permission. You are no longer hoping life will deliver you something different. You are already living as if it has, and that as if doesn't mean fake, it means faithful. Faithful to the truth that your external reality is a reflection of internal frequency, and the frequency is born from identity. Each day becomes an opportunity to return to that identity. Each choice becomes a moment of alignment or delay. And with every action, every belief, every emotional response, you either reinforce the old self or create space for the new one to rise. Manifestation is not a someday concept. It is a now practice, a present, tense embodiment, and it is not reserved for the gifted, the lucky, or the spiritual elite. It belongs to anyone who is willing to take full responsibility for who they are becoming. Because when you become the person who matches the life you dream of, the dream stops being a dream. It becomes inevitable, not because of magic, but because of mastery. Everything you've ever wanted, every dream, every vision, every silent hope whispered into the dark, is not beyond you. It has never been out of reach. It has only been waiting for you to remember the truth. That manifestation is not about chasing something outside of you, but about awakening something already within. This journey is not about gaining more. It's about becoming more, not because you are lacking, but because you are powerful beyond what your old story ever allowed you to believe. You attract what you are, not what you want. This is where the path begins, with the deep, unshakable understanding that your outer world will never rise higher than the identity you carry in your inner world. You can dream all you want, but unless you become emotionally, mentally, and energetically aligned with that dream, it cannot find a place to land. Desire alone is not enough. Identity is the magnet. You don't draw things to you with hope. You draw them to you with alignment. Emotion fuels manifestation. Gratitude makes it real. If identity is the foundation, emotion is the engine. Emotion gives color, weight, and frequency to your thoughts. It is what turns intentions into magnetic signals. And gratitude is the highest of those signals. Gratitude says, I am already one with what I desire. I am not waiting. I am embodying. It collapses the illusion of time. It anchors your future in the present. It turns manifestation from a theory into a felt, lived experience. But to truly step into that emotional state, you must break the pattern, break the story, break the identity that was built in survival. You must be willing to question the voice in your head that says you're not ready, not worthy, not capable. Those aren't truths, they're echoes, and until you rewrite the story, it will keep looping. The future doesn't need your permission to exist, but it does need your participation. To write a new chapter, you have to stop rereading the old one. You cannot manifest a different life while holding on to the version of you that was only built to survive the past. That shift begins in action. Action signals commitment. Momentum creates magic. Every step you take becomes a declaration to life itself. A signal that you are no longer just wishing, you are moving, you are becoming. Action is where potential becomes kinetic. It's where the invisible becomes visible. It's where the idea of a new life transforms into evidence. Momentum is the alchemy of transformation, not perfection, not certainty, just motion repeated with courage even when doubt is loud. And all of this, the alignment, the emotion, the breaking, the action, leads to the core truth that ties it all together. Manifestation is identity in motion. You become what you seek, not by hoping it lands in your lap, but by stepping fully into the frequency of the version of you who already has it. That version doesn't just live in your future, it lives in your decision, the decision to no longer play small. The decision to no longer speak the language of lack. The decision to no longer settle for a reality that doesn't match the fullness of who you are meant to be. Your life is not the result of luck or chance. It is the mirror of your energy. It reflects your patterns, your choices, your standards, and your willingness to embody your truth. The world is not waiting for someone more gifted, more worthy, or more prepared. It is waiting for you to say yes to the version of yourself that has always known this was possible. To remember that you do not need to chase what you already are. You only need to allow it, embody it, live it. This is your invitation, not just to dream, but to rise, not just to ask, but to align, not just to want, but to become. Your desires are sacred, your energy is powerful, and your identity is the gateway. The moment you choose to live in alignment with the future you envision, not someday, not when it's easy, but now, that's the moment manifestation stops being a concept and starts becoming your reality.